everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Covid-Novid podcast with your host, Puck.
And LongwoodGeek.
All right, so let's get right into this. Right now, we are up to 150 countries that are currently infected.
And they're urging everyone to follow the guidelines that have been put out so far, because if we don't, we'll definitely have over 60% infected during all the cycles, which will not be good for any kind of recovery. We're currently only in cycle A. They're expecting at least 3 cycles, so we haven't even hit B or C yet.
Good news is over 432,000 tests have been completed, not including the private tests.
And they're working on collecting the data county by county so that we can kind of see the spread in a more granular way rather than just kind of going state X has 30,000 infected.
Now, on that, if you have very few cases in your state, maintain your flu vigilance.
That's the only way that we're going to be able to keep this from spreading, is with the isolation guidelines, the testing guidelines, and the contact guidelines.
4 counties constitute the majority of current/new cases: Suffolk, Westchester, Nassau, and New York City. They're 66% of the new cases.
Although we are close to finishing up the testing backlog per Dr. Burks.
And on that, drive-through testing will have self-testing. Basically, you'll swab your nose, put it in a bio bag, and get it out there.
That's going to be good for cutting down on the amount of PPE that needs to be used in order to do the testing. So that will save PPE for the situations and places that actually need it.
Now, when we do get successful on eliminating the virus and the cases go down, we need to be very careful whenever we release the travel ban, because China has shown an influx of cases since they laxed their ban.
And this very well could be seasonal. They don't know for sure. But what we're starting to see now, even in the southern hemispheres, they're having cases appear during the winter season. Normally flu is a spring thing. But in this case, it looks like it's actually persisting through cold weather. It is, per Dr. Fulci, inevitable that we will get a second cycle.
But on that, the president has approved major disaster relief for several states.
He's using the DPA where needed, but he has not had to use it much at all, thanks to all the companies and such that have been donating and volunteering materials. But he has said he will use it if he needs to.
On the relief bill, unfortunately, that hasn't been passed yet, but whenever it does, it's supposed to be $2.2 trillion. You want to break down where all that money's going?
Sure. $350 billion for job retention loans for places that are paying their workers. About $300 billion to direct cash payments for someone making $99,000 or less per year. So for a family of 4, you could be looking at receiving approximately $3,400. The payments will be done directly into people's accounts, usually within 3 weeks when this is passed. Of that, we're still talking another $250 billion to expand unemployment benefits up to 100% of people's salaries up to 4 months. That includes independent contractors and self-employed people. They are eligible for this, although the guidelines for how to report that have not been released.
So people like me that do commission work, we're covered.
That is what it would appear. I would need to see the guidelines for sure to see exactly how to calculate it. But from the way they discussed it, yes, anybody who is contracting themselves independently, which are most artists, editors, things like that, they absolutely are eligible. They are going to be putting $100 billion towards doctors. I don't know exactly how they're going to be sending it to doctors, if that's going to be for private practices, doctors individually. They haven't really said. There's a lot of this that there aren't guidelines for yet.
It'll be doctors, nurses, pretty much anybody that's currently on the front lines.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I'd missed that part. They are going to be doing another $16 billion in funding for PPE for doctors, nurses, and others. $45 billion to go to the Disaster Relief Fund. $27 billion for the Strategic National Stockpile of all the supplies necessary to combat something like this. And it also includes significant funding for vaccines on top of an additional $8 billion in funding for them. $500 billion in support for the hardest hit industries with a ban on corporate buyback. And $150 billion to states that have corona expenses, and that's per the Secretary of the Treasury. Now, it looks like we've had some more supplies get shipped out through FEMA. Puck, can you break that down?
9.4 million N95 respirator masks, 20 million surgical masks, 3.1 million face shields, and 2.6 million hospital gowns. That's not counting the gloves and stuff like that. They've gotten on the ball with this.
They are saying, however, that while you can sew cloth masks, it's only recommended if you don't have any other better mask. We currently have somewhat of a supply of masks, but We don't. It doesn't appear that they need to have the masks sewn yet. But honestly, if you're bored and sitting in quarantine, it wouldn't hurt to sew some. And they've identified some significant resources that can be used for masks.
The Olympics have officially been delayed to 2021.
And state parks will be waiving all entrance fees per Vice President Pence. That's interesting. I guess if you are traveling as a family and you're not contacting anybody else, which is one of the reasons why waiving the fees is important, that would be a way to kind of get out of quarantine. And get some outdoors time. But again, if you're going to be doing something like that, make sure you're practicing your social distancing so that you don't run the chance of infecting or getting infected by other people.
There's actually going to be some guidelines that are released later on this week that the state parks are going to basically put into effect so that everybody can get out, enjoy it, and not have to worry about infecting others.
Yeah, it's when you've got a quarantine like this, there is things that are necessary to kind of keep your sanity. Cabin fever is a very real thing, and people that aren't used to being in close proximity 24 hours a day, it can cause some roughness. I can honestly say Puck and I have been lucky; our fights have been to a minimum. So it's something that you do need to keep in mind. Don't find things to do. Sitting around watching TV all day or something like that may be fun for a day or two, but it will eventually lead to some anxiety.
Yep, yep. Well, this briefing was a little bit shorter than it's been in the past. It wasn't as short as last time's. We were able to kind of get this chopped down. So, you got anything else you want to add to it?
No, nothing that I've got. Thank you to everybody who's been listening and giving us feedback. We will be continuing to do these daily as long as there's press briefings. And once the coronavirus is contained, we may switch to something else. But for now, we want to keep you guys informed, and we want to make sure we're doing it in a way that works for you. So if you have feedback, you can hit me up at LongwoodGeek on Twitter. I'm happy to pass it on to Puck.
Yep, and you can actually reach me at Puck Brand Gaming on Twitter as well.
Well, thank you guys very much. I hope everybody continues to stay compassionate, stay safe, and stay well. This has been the COVID-Novid podcast, episode 4. Puck, I think we're out of here.
Call us a car because we're outie. Bye.
Bye, everybody.